Roland V Drums 5 Series. Flagship sound engine. Precision you can feel. Expand your drum kit. Endless new sounds. Seamlessly connect and create. Creativity unleashed. For more info, visit roland.com.
Hello, everyone. Before we dive into today's episode, I wanted to remind you that my book, Drummers on Drumming, is available now on Amazon as both a paperback and an ebook. Based on the Big Fat 5 segment of this podcast, where I sit down with my favorite drummers to discuss the 5 records and stories that shaped their approach to the instrument, this book is packed with insights from the drummers who redefined how we think about the modern drum set. You can grab your copy now by checking the link in this episode's show notes or simply searching Drummers on Drumming on Amazon. So thank you for all the support, and now let's get into the show. What is up? Welcome back to Drummers on Drumming, a podcast powered by Big Fat Snare Drum. My name is Ben Hilzinger, and I'm back with another installment of the Drum Panel. Today I have my co-host, Eric Urrea, and a returning guest who's been on many iterations of this podcast, Zack Albetta. Zack is also the co-host of the podcast Working Drummer, and he is currently touring with the Broadway production of And Juliet. He's in Memphis right now, and we got together to talk about the greatest hits that I always talk about, insecurity and imposter syndrome, but specifically in the instance of having access to someone that might benefit your career and how you approach that. And the bulk of this conversation was actually about the trade-offs with having a consistent gig that might be a little monotonous versus having the freedom to do whatever you want to do or different things going on at all times, but having less security and how we approach all that stuff. So there's a lot of other things we talked about, but I hope you enjoy this episode of the Drum Panel featuring me, Eric Urrea, and Zack Albetta. Cheers. What piece of musical gear, and this is directed towards Zack, what piece of musical gear throughout history would you like to own?
I've heard you ask this question to a number of people, and my first knee-jerk reaction is just like Ringo's Ludwig drum set, you know? And
I
know
guess
there
we
was
should
more
say,
than one.
like, yeah, minus that. I mean, I'm not going to say it's a bad answer, but...
Ringo's drum set notwithstanding, I think I want Bill Stewart's ride cymbal. I think I want that ride cymbal that he played on the John Scofield Trio live album, En Route, and it's the ride cymbal that he's played on just tons and tons of records, and it's just like his main ride, and I think it's a beat to shit old A from the 60s or something, but I've just been chasing Bill Stewart since the moment I heard him, and actually having that ride cymbal, I think, would complete me. It has such articulation to it. It's weird and complex sounding. It's unique without being weird. You hear that cymbal, you know it's Bill Stewart. You're like, I've never heard a ride cymbal like that, and I never want to hear another one. And it just has like a beautiful spank to it that I haven't been able to find in any other cymbal. I was at Drum Center Portsmouth a year ago or so, and I'm a Sabian artist, and there was a Sabian prototype there that was like very Bill Stewart-esque, but I left it there because, you know, most drum shops don't honor the artist pricing, and I totally understand why. Yeah. But I got in touch with Chris at Sabian, and I was like, man, I saw this cymbal. Is there another one like it laying around? And like there wasn't another one of that specific cymbal, but he said, you know, well, we got this other one that's very similar, and I was like, okay, send me that one. And he's right, it is very similar, but it's not quite. So I'm still chasing that dragon. And, you know, with the tour I'm on, I have zero use for a Bill Stewart-esque Sabian prototype ride, and if I paid retail money for that ride, I might catch some side eye from upper management from the wife.
Well, you were just saying how much you've been working, man. So maybe you deserve a prototype cymbal at full price plus tax.
Treat myself on a useless cymbal, a cymbal I won't be able to touch until 2 years from now.
When it comes to Broadway, because I'm so not in that world, do they respect you as an individual artist enough to where they will work within the confines of what you want to express yourself with when it comes to brands and stuff?
Yeah, definitely. If there was a specific sound, like especially for a tour, like if the Broadway production had a very specific sound that the composer or the music supervisor or somebody wanted to maintain, and Sabian wasn't able to recreate that or do that, then at least for that item, they might sort of insist
Sure.
that, like, just get one of these, so it can be the same. But they wouldn't make me, switch the entire setup to a different brand.
Mm-hmm.
The drum sounds, like both when it comes to the sounds and the tones of the drums and cymbals, and in a lot of cases what I'm playing, a lot is left up to my discretion, and I'm just sort of trusted to make it appropriate for the show and for the genre. And it doesn't have to be identical to what's going on Broadway. It just has to be, the same.
Is it the production's kit, technically?
Yes. Yeah, they bought it all, and they got it at my artist discount for everything. But it was actually, I think the closest thing I've had to a rock star moment is actually the contractor that hired us all, Michael Ahrens, sort of outfitted the tour with all the gear, because he has hookups with guitar companies and keyboard companies and drum companies and case companies. So he usually outfits tours with Pearl drums. He handles Hamilton and a bunch of other stuff. So when it came time to order the drums, I was like, I know you usually go with Pearl. I'm a Ludwig guy. Can I just put you in touch with my Ludwig guy? And he was like, oh, yeah, absolutely. So I sent him this Christmas list of drums and cymbals. And the case company that he works with is called Mental Cases in Nashville. So
That's a great name.
It is. So we got Ludwig drums, Sabian cymbals, Pearl hardware, because there's a big rack. So all of these drums and cymbals and hardware got sent to Nashville to the case company. And the case company built all of our cases custom to fit all of our shit. These big rolling vault cases. Mine's the size of an armoire. So they built the cases, they put all of our shit in the cases, and then they shipped the cases to Baltimore, where we were doing tech rehearsal. Yeah, I just, the first day of rehearsal in Baltimore, I got to walk into the band area, and there was just this case sitting there open, like with all the drums sitting right in there. It was a good moment.
Yeah.
That might be the best day of my life.
It was one of
Yeah.
the best days of my life. And I actually got kind of surprised because I assumed that the case would be closed and I would have like this sort of like big opening, unlatching moment, which I was very much looking forward to. But it was even better to just walk in and sort of be surprised by this open case just standing there. And, it was great.
I don't know, Zach, if you want to answer this, but when do you in this world know when it's time to move on from a production? Do they try and do a big shakedown every 2 years? Is that like standard in the industry, or is it really just it's up to you? And how do you make that decision if it is up to you?
It's pretty much up to you. The actors work on 1-year contracts. It's actually a written contract that they actually sign. And, some of them get renewed after a year and some of them move on for whatever reason. But with the musicians, it's pretty open-ended. I have not signed a piece of paper that said I will do this show until X date. But it's just kind of understood when you get offered the gig, usually the first year, give or take, of dates is kind of mapped out. And you're not signing in blood that I'm going to do this entire year, but it's understood. It's like you're going to be here for a while. You're going to do this for a while.
Yeah.
Barring some unforeseen circumstance, you're pretty much welcome to leave whenever you want, but give us a month's notice, help us with the transition, that kind of thing. And as far as when it's time to leave, I don't know. I can't answer that because this is the second such tour I've done. The first one was the Ain't Too Proud first national tour, the Temptations musical. And I took that over about halfway through the run. So I did the second half of the run, which was about 16 months in total. And I didn't really have to decide when to leave that because it ended, on this tour, I think plan A is to go the distance with it. They're already talking about dates in 2027.
Wow.
We're like, if it goes that distance, then we're almost halfway right now, I think. Obviously, I would like to stay healthy enough to keep doing the tour. I've succeeded at that so far. I was actually talking to my brother last night, who is not a musician, but he was like, if your plan is to ride this for a long time, stay focused on what that's going to do for you and Christina. career-wise, money-wise. And, if it becomes untenable for some reason, or if you're injured and, obviously then you got to figure something else out. But I guess he was kind of encouraging me to stay focused on what the gig is ultimately going to do for me and try not to focus too much on the current fatigue.
Sure.
Yeah.
Would you consider yourself sort of like outside of the Broadway world and then have like come into this world?
Yeah, I do feel like a bit of an interloper. First and foremost, because I don't live in New York.
Sure.
Obviously the people who do the shows on Broadway live in New York, and a lot of the people who do the tours are based in New York. Not all of them, but yeah, I just kind of got pulled up the ladder behind Q Robinson to do that Ain't Too Proud tour. And, there's a lot about the Broadway world that I still don't know. There's a lot of shows that I've never played and never seen. And I'm not familiar with. There's a lot of people in this world, whether it's drummers or MDs or other musicians who are very active in the Broadway world who I'm, not familiar with, never heard of. I'm not unique in being sort of having come from outside the Broadway world, because there are a lot of musicians who do a Broadway show or a tour and have a background of so much other stuff. But yeah, there are times, especially when I'm on a tour, like I'm in the bubble of this show with 50 people who do this for a living. And, obviously the actors are all in on Broadway and all up on it. But, a couple of the musicians in the band are like definitely more versed in just the world of Broadway musicals than I am in terms of, like I said, their familiarity with different shows and different people and et cetera.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard you talk about it so much on the Working Drummer podcast. I was always curious, like, because a lot of the Broadway shows now almost require some outside Broadway style of playing or like an understanding of genre. So like I was just curious how often people who are outsiders come in.
Yeah, it's pretty often, and when it comes to genre, something that I'm trying to impress upon younger drummers in the Broadway world is that Broadway is not a genre. Almost everything that you hear in a Broadway show is derivative of something else that is a genre unto itself with a culture and a history unto itself. And I think the mistake a lot of young drummers make, because there's like younger generations of drummers, there are drummers who like all they want to do is Broadway. All they want to do is musical theater. And, what the genre of a particular show is and what the drumming style is matters less to them than it would to me. They just want to be in that environment. They want to be in that world. And I think the mistake that they make is jumping headlong into that world without getting any real experience in any genres in their natural habitat. So I think you're going to be a much more effective and desirable Broadway drummer if you've got some experience playing some small group jazz, or if you've played in a wedding band, or if you've done some dive bar gigs, or if you've done some singer-songwriter projects, or if you've done some recording. I feel like that's one of the strengths I bring into the Broadway world, is that I have a lot of experience playing a lot of different types of music out in the quote-unquote real world. And I don't want to give short shrift to Broadway and the music that happens there, because it is it is real music. It is real people really playing music.
Sure.
But like I said, it's derivative. It's a little bit of a bubble. You're often in a literal box, and the real juice of being on stage with people in front of people isn't there. So if you can get some of that experience and bring that vibe and that energy into whatever music you're playing on the Broadway show, I think it just makes the show that much better.
Where are you I mean, it might change from venue to venue, but where are you in regards to what people would think of as the pit? Because a lot of musicians are not in the pit. They're in some room upstairs via cable and a TV set. But where are you usually when it comes to the show?
The entire band is remote on this show. We do not utilize the pit at all.
Wow.
And in whatever venues are possible, they put extra seating in the pit, which means more money for us. But plan A in any given venue is for the band to be all together in some space. And oftentimes that's like the trap room under the stage. Sometimes that's like a green room or a big dressing room somewhere. Sometimes it's just not possible for me to be in the same room as the band, because like even if I am in the same space as the band, I'm still in my ISO booth, like I'm still separated from them. But sometimes there is not space to have the band and my ISO booth in the same space, so I'm off somewhere else, and it varies from venue to venue.
Do you enjoy that? Is that you can kind of get in your own little cocoon?
There's pros and cons to it. The pros are kind of the main reason they do it, which is just consistency. My sound and my mix and my tones, and like they are exactly the same no matter where we are, because I am in the exact same space. And because we're hidden away from the audience, I usually like eat dinner during the second act. I'll bring a salad in there, and I usually start eating at intermission, and I just kind of like finish it off between shows in the second act. So, unlike most of the people on this tour, I can eat dinner at like kind of a normal dinner hour, which I really like. But, it is very isolating. It does feel disconnected, and it's hard to sort of capture the same energy that you get when you're in a space with people, and air and energy are literally moving between you. And, that goes for my fellow band members, but also for the cast members on stage. I hear them and I see them on a little screen, but it's a little harder to feel part of what's going on in the big room out there,
Yeah, I was thinking about if there's ever going to be a technology, and maybe there is, because I've seen some advertisements where you can practice with your band in real time over this app, and there's zero latency, which I don't know how it's magic. But I'm curious if there's ever going to be a time where, to save money and also for the musicians, they'll be like, say your entire band would still be in Atlanta, and you guys would go to the studio that's like 10 minutes from your house, and then you just, because you want to be able to react in real time to what's going on stage, but you can just do what you're doing now, but then go to your own house at night.
Right. I'm sure that day is coming. I don't know how close it is, and I don't know how I feel about it, honestly.
That's what I was going to say, and how
Sure.
it's
Yeah,
not an
that's a
immediate
tricky one.
excitement I can see from you. So what would be the downside to that?
Again, just the disconnection. Like,
Yeah.
I feel disconnected from the people on stage now, and I'm between 50 and 200 feet away from them. I can't imagine what it would feel like being 1,200 miles away from them. But, a gig's a gig.
Yeah.
If it's 1,200 miles away. And, actually, the very attractive part of that is just being home. I have loved seeing every corner of this country. If there's a city of any consequence, I've probably been to it. We spend at least a week in every city. So I get to be Anthony Bourdain in here and just eat everything in sight. And so I think I don't know, like you'd have the convenience of playing the show remotely, from home or from a studio that's close to home. But, there'd be that just even more exaggerated sort of isolation and disconnection. But then you get to go home to your own home, and you get to play local gigs, and you get to do other stuff. So, yeah, I don't know where it's going, man. And you've caught me at an interesting time, because again, I am pretty tired. I do need a break, and I don't know what the future holds for how music is made on Broadway, and I don't know what the future holds for what kind of shows are coming down the pike. But I do think, after, like, whenever I'm done doing this tour, whenever that is, I'm going to need a break from musical theater. I'm going to need to just, like I said, get on stage with people, in front of people, play some different music, make music in a different way. There are definite exceptions, but a lot of the trends that I see in musical theater are getting further away from how I like to make music.
Sure.
So we'll see. We'll see.
Well,
how.
I guess that you worked it out, and maybe in real time, but just when to move on. It's like your loose answer, I guess, or the general answer is that you have to listen to yourself. It really is like you need to make sure that Zach's okay up here, that's a good barometer.
I'm more and more cognizant of that. I'm more and more sort of in tune with like how I'm feeling about what I'm doing.
Yeah.
and just trying to process that in a, conscious and healthy way so that I can keep doing it. And so that I can keep feeling good about doing it. Because, I've talked with my therapist about this and a lot of other stuff. And we've talked about it on the podcast, how no matter what your gig is, if like one thing is taken up all or most of your time, it doesn't matter how cool it is. It doesn't matter how much it pays. It doesn't matter what all the pros are. It's easy to start focusing on the cons. And it's easy to start looking at other gigs and other types of gigs and think, man, I would love to do that again sometime soon.
Yeah.
But the way my therapist put it, so I was just like, I was ruminating about all this and just sort of trying to qualify my feelings that like, I'm still grateful for this gig. I'm still enjoying doing it. I intend to keep doing it for a while. And he said, yeah, but too much cake will make anybody sick.
Roland V Drums 3 Series. Flagship sound engine. Fits your space. Practice made easy. Expand your sound and setup. Seamlessly connect and create. Next level drumming starts here. For more info, visit Roland.com.
John Legend, Sheryl Crow, Elvis Costello, and Alanis Morissette star in the MGM Plus original series, Words and Music. Iconic artists share intimate performances and the stories behind the songs. Series premiere on November 30th, only on MGM Plus.
How do you, I guess I'll ask Zack and then of course Eric, because I always do this. I invite someone on and I never even address Eric till like minute 25.
No, he's already gotten more comments in than other episodes I've heard. Like,
yes, exactly.
I'm jumping in. Yeah.
No, but it's good to hear that even a gig like this, Zack, I guess I don't want to say good, but it's reassuring that even when you have a gig that is financially predictable and consistent, that it still can be stressful. But I guess the question is, how has it changed your, like when you're sitting at night, have a glass of wine, if you don't have the consistent gig, a lot of times you spend that ruminating over, well, what's it going to look like in 5 months? I have nothing after January. Have you noticed a difference since you don't have that right now? And then Eric, you've been busy, but you also jump between many bands like I do. Mm-hmm. Do you long for that kind of consistency, even after hearing what Zack, some of the stresses he's talked about with this gig? Or would you be like, dude, but it's a paycheck and I'll take that?
Oh, man. I would do unforgivable things to have some consistency. It's pretty great.
Ditto.
Yeah. It was like I had the craziest fall, and then now that winter's here, it's like I don't have anything for the next few months. I mean, local stuff, but
totally.
But yeah, I mean that's the catch-22, and I go back and forth with it a lot about like whether I want to jump in on the kind of corporate gig setting for something that's maybe a little bit more consistent, but yeah, it's tough. I think for me, the way that I view it, at least, it's what is going to get me the closest to my ultimate goals, And for me, that's like, I want to play Red Rocks. I want to go on tour in Australia. So it's like, what avenues are going to kind of get me close to that and kind of saving room and leaving space for those opportunities. I also know myself, and I could do a corporate gig that I would maybe not enjoy, but just kind of stick with it because I just get complacent. So I for me personally, I try to force myself to leave space for what's going to get me closest to the dream.
Yeah, so you're accepting the stress of the unpredictability, but it's because you know that ultimately, if you zoomed out, you're more happy having the freedom. I get, okay, cool, yeah.
But I would love to know what's going on 6 months from now.
Oh, yeah.
That would be awesome.
I guess best case scenario, and I agree with you, is I like the randomness of my life, meaning going from this band to having a week off and maybe doing more teaching that week and blah, 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 that I would love to know what the next year and a half looks like in the chaos. But I would still like the chaos.
Right, exactly, yep.
I'm reminded of something my wife says a lot, which is choose your hard. It's great. Hard either way. So like Eric, you are shouldering the burden of unpredictability and sort of instability, whereas somebody in my kind of gig is shouldering the burden of exhaustion and monotony. And, you know, don't get me wrong, I have a blast playing this show.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm, you know, enduring this unenjoyable thing just for a paycheck. Because it is incredibly enjoyable and it is incredibly rewarding. And, you know, it's incredibly educational and developmental to deliver the same thing 8 shows a week at a high level. And that's the other thing about this gig. Like, one of the perks is obviously the consistency, but this, in terms of the level of production overall, this is the highest level of production that I've ever been a part of. And it's the level that I feel I belong at. And that level of production exists across multiple types of gigs, any type of gig, whether it's Broadway or a touring band or session work or whatever. But this gig and these tours that I've done definitely represent the pinnacle in terms of the level of production that I've been a part of. And that's really inspiring to go into every day. It's challenging because there are days when I would love a night off, and I really have to sort of get myself up to do the show and to bring the energy that the show needs every night. One of my sort of guiding principles out here is something that my MD on Ain't Too Proud told me early on. I'd been on the tour like a few weeks or a month or two or something, and we were having this conversation, and I was getting kind of heady and self-conscious about some, a couple mistakes I had made, some inconsistencies in my show. But he said, look, here's the thing. We play A shows. Sometimes your A is a 99, and sometimes it's a 91. If you start playing B shows, we're going to have a conversation. But as long as you're playing A shows, we're good. And that has helped me sort of keep my head on straight out here about what I'm doing and the level I'm doing it at. It's not 100% consistent, and some shows are better than others. But as long as I'm like clearing that mark of the A show, as long as I can honestly say, like, that show wasn't perfect, but that was an A show, and if I paid full price for this ticket, I'd be totally happy. Mm-hmm. That's the mindset I head into there with every night. Like, okay, let's do what we got to do to deliver another A show. And we've had so many comments from audience members, like, they'll see one of our band members coming out the stage door with a guitar, and they'll be like, oh, well, to be fair, we do bow at the end of the show. So like the audience does see that there was a band full of humans playing actual music, but a lot of people have commented that they thought it was tracked. Wow. Which is kind of like it's almost a backhanded compliment, because like on the one hand, like, we sounded so good that they thought we were recording.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it's like I didn't sound human to them. And for the time being, at least, there are very strong union rules in place that prevent the machines from taking over this world. But they're creeping in.
Yeah. Oh, that is nice. That way, working in a union, that's also a big nice thing.
True.
Yeah, man. So one of my buddies is Kevin Leon, who's the drummer for St. Paul and the Broken Bones, and his wife and my wife are good friends. And my wife and I were having this conversation about, the various sources of frustration that I'm sometimes faced with out here on this kind of gig. Mm-hmm. And she was like, well, whatever you're dealing with, Kevin is dealing with a whole separate set of shit. Whatever frustrations come with your Broadway tour, Kevin doesn't share those frustrations on his St. Paul tour, but there are other frustrations that are just a non-issue on a unionized Broadway tour. It's like sometimes Kevin is not sure what flight he's getting on the day before he's supposed to get on it. It's just kind of, and that's how most tours operate. That's how like most bands operate. It's kind of DIY, and there's a tour manager, and it's a little chaotic and so much less regimented than my world out here. It's a trade-off, man. And there are even there's trade-offs between the Broadway world and sort of the regular rock touring world, but there's even trade-offs between Broadway shows, depending on sort of the culture and management of that show and that tour. I've almost switched kind of 180 from Ain't Too Proud, because whatever was a drawback about the Ain't Too Proud tour is kind of a strength of this tour. and vice versa. Like whatever there were some things that I really loved about the Ain't Too Proud tour that I don't really get on this tour. So it's like, it feels like kind of a 1-for-1, just switching, choose your hard.
Well, I guess now we'll get into the second question I've written down. No, it might be the same answer. Sometimes it is. But Zack, if you could be a fly on the wall of any record, which record would it be and why?
It's a record that I listened to last night after hearing a couple of episodes of y'all asking other people this question, and it's Kiko by Los Lobos.
I'm not familiar with that album.
And I think, like, if I'll just go ahead and answer the other question now, like, what's one record that every musician should listen to or something, like Kiko by Los Lobos. It's an amazing record. They made it in 92, and Chad Blake is the producer, Pete Thomas is the drummer. Both of those people worked with Tom Waits around the same time. And this record, Kiko, just sounds like, I was texting a buddy of mine yesterday and I sent him a link to it. I was like, this record sound like if Tom Waits made Graceland, it would be this. But yeah, the drum sounds are just so cool. It's like, it's a heavily produced record, but it still feels handmade. You know, there's some drumming that's like just very straight ahead backbeat, and there's some that's very left of center and weird. And the songwriting is really cool. And, you know, Los Lobos are just such a vibey, unique unicorn of a band. Can't say enough good things about that record. Just really interesting. And I can kind of picture, you know, now that I know enough about recording to get in trouble, I can kind of picture how some of these drum sounds came about. And especially you know how if you hear like a snare, especially, you can kind of picture the snare. Yeah. I'm doing that a lot on this record. So yeah, that record, I'd just be into, you know, seeing what the hell they did. Because it's not magic. It's not like, you know, it's not sorcery, and the sounds aren't completely wacky. They're just really cool and interesting and substantive, and they just grab you. So I would imagine that, you know, how they came about these sounds was just mostly the blocking and tackling of tuning and mic placement and all that essential shit. But I would love to see that whole process. Yeah, it was like that. It was that early 90s. You know, there were so many records in the 90s that it was the peak of analog recording, you know, before digital took over. And it was also kind of the peak of drum construction and sort of, you know, fashioning drum sounds. It was maybe not the peak, but it was the peak up until that point. Both analog recording and drum construction and, you know, the fashioning of drum tone were a higher art than they had ever been. So a lot of those records in the 90s are just like, the drum sounds are unbelievable. So good. And really, it's not that fucking hard. Like it.
Well, for me, it is. Tuning my drums? Like, are you kidding me?
It is, but it isn't. Like, it's not rocket science.
Yeah.
And, you know, people have been figuring it out for 80 years before digitization came along. It wasn't secret knowledge, and it still isn't secret knowledge. But, you know, this is the Clint Eastwood portion of the interview where I tell everybody to get off my lawn because, you know, I'm on the Reddit forums and people are talking about, you know, sample replacement and all this. And I get that it has a role to play, and I get that it's the way of the world, and I get that we're not going back. But I just try to remind people that, like, getting really high quality, cool, unique drum tones is not that fucking hard. Like, it takes some investment. You do have to learn, and there's a ton of trial and error, and there's a ton of experimentation. Like, it takes an investment of time and energy, but it is not rocket science. It is just sort of common sense shit. And once you learn the common sense guidelines about it, you can start doing cool stuff with pretty rudimentary setups, pretty inexpensive gear. You know, just mics and drums in a room.
You know, that's really interesting, especially in the context of, like, okay, people nowadays, like, pursue the sounds from albums pre-90s when drum construction wasn't amazing and people didn't know how to tune amazingly well and people didn't know how to record amazingly well. So yeah, it is funny that now we have all this access to all this really great stuff that should make it way easier to get those tones, if not better. And yet we're favoring sample replacement.
The other thing about the whole recording thing and like learning, again, just the basic blocking and tackling of tuning and muffling and mic placement, learning that shit has been invaluable in my live playing, and especially in this gig. Because on this Broadway shit, you know, what I'm doing is much more akin to a recording session than a live performance. I'm not out in the room with the band and the audience. I'm in a little box. And knowing about tuning and mic placement and being able to have conversations with audio folk, you know, I'm really proud of the drum sounds that I've gotten on both of these tours. And in both cases, they were manipulated very little. We got most of the way there with tuning and mic placement.
Hell yeah.
So the more you can arm yourself with this knowledge and the more you can talk to audio people, like, and it's not about asking them to do shit. It's about like, if you arm yourself with this knowledge, then you can have a conversation with audio people who are open to it, and you're both rowing in the same direction for drum sounds, right? Because you can explain your agenda to them. It's like, here's the sounds I'm going for. You know, what are you hearing out front? What's the situation with your EQ and your gates out front? Can I like tune this drum a little differently or muffle it a little differently? And you can soften that gate and we'll just get a more natural sound out of it. Like, there's so many conversations you can have with them on that front that arrives, you know, if you're rowing in the same direction, you arrive at better, bigger, fuller, more natural, more mixable drum sounds. Try to approach it with, you know, wanting to make their lives easier, you know, because you definitely have your own requests and you want certain shit out of sound people. But if you can demonstrate that your knowledge of their world can actually make their lives easier if they just fucking talk to you, you know, then you got them.
I would assume that someone on a Broadway show would be a little bit less disgruntled than the average sound guy that is at the venue, you know?
Generally, yes. I would say they're probably more stressed out and exhausted than the average venue sound person. I don't know if people know this, like a front of house audio person on a Broadway tour, of course they're mixing the band, they're mixing the music, and they're mixing the voices, but they're also mixing dialogue. And however many characters are on stage, like they all have those lavalier mics, right? So say there's 6 characters on stage and they're having a conversation. The audio person is turning mics up and down in real time because they don't want any bleed from anywhere and they don't want feedback. And it's, you know, with all of those mics on stage, it's really easy to create feedback, especially if there's, you know, band sound coming in the side fills. So the fewer mics are live on stage, the better. So I've watched these people mix a show and they've got, you know, anywhere from 2 to 8 fingers active, just bumping people up and down in real time, depending on when they're talking and singing. So it's an incredibly detailed and I would imagine stressful job that, you know, again, the average venue sound person is like, you know, they're doing shit in real time and they're riding the faders and whatever, but it's not like line to line and word to word, and it's intense.
You can see him just pushing it up and down. Then Zach comes in. So the 8-inch tom, could you take out?
Yes, yes, and you make an excellent point, which is something that I had to sort of become aware of and adjust for, because, you know, whatever my little fucking needs are in drum world are pretty far down the list of things that our A1 is worried about in a given moment.
Well, I wanted to talk to you guys about this because, and I don't want this to be a name drop thing, although it will appear to be, but so Eve 6 played in Connecticut last weekend, and Tom Morello happened to be playing the same town, and he knew Max from Eve 6 from a session they did a while ago. I forget the specifics about it. But anyways, Eric Gardner, who is the drummer for Tom Morello right now, used to play with John, the other guy in Eve 6. So at about 2 p.m., Eric's like, you guys should come on and play this Kick Out the Jams by MC5 with Tom Morello. And so it was this whole thing. And when we got to the show, they gave the two guys that were going to be on stage backstage passes, and then me and our tech were just provided really nice seats. And once we got there, the TM was like, we're going to try and get you guys backstage passes. And my immediate thing was like, don't even worry about it. This is like, we're fine. I just want to enjoy the night. I don't want to impose. And then afterwards, they did give us backstage passes. I got to go hang out with Tom Morello for like an hour. And it ended up being a really cool experience where I would run into him later and he'd be like, oh shit, dude, good to see you. But my immediate thing is to never bother people and to never just like, I would rather just be part of the show and then just leave and have it whatever. But then there's some people that would be like, why would you as a guy working in the industry not see that as an opportunity and jump on that, you know, I'm not saying this is my thought, but some people would be like, you could maybe be called to play with him later. And like, why would you not do that? But my immediate thought is like, as a human to human, I just want to take up as little space as possible. So in those kind of situations, do you guys have career first where like, I should probably make that contact? Or do you, for the most part, just be like, I don't want to, you know, and this is obviously a specific example, but in the situations, do you, I guess, I'm trying to figure out the question here, but how do you guys navigate? Do you always go, no, I need to make that point of contact, or do you just chill?
I mean, I should preface this while saying that, like, I'm not the most outgoing person in the world. So
Me neither.
There's that aspect which is looming large in my thought process.
Same.
But no, I mean, for me, I think I would always rather be viewed as like a compatriot, you know? And when it comes to situations where it's like, all right, I'm backstage at their show, you know, this is their house. I don't want to be the guy who's like, hey, let's talk about me and what I can do for you. Like, I don't want to, like, I would much rather get brought into that situation more organically and not have to force my way in and feel like I'm putting on a show, and certainly not be on the drive home being like, why'd I say I like your shoes? Stupid, you know? I don't want to be...
sucked.
Part of it has to do with sort of how much I have in the social tank in that moment. Yes. And, you know, sometimes it's fuller than others, and I've become willing to forego an interaction in the interest of my own mental health is too strong a word. But if I'm feeling drained and if the introvert in me is kind of winning out and just saying like, let's go the fuck home, or let's not even go, then I'm more and more okay with just like not having that interaction. Are you talking about like taking up an opportunity? I guess you're talking about all of it. There's sort of the scenario where you take advantage of an opportunity to get a backstage pass, but there's also the scenario where like you're already backstage and so is standing right there.
Yes.
Yeah. And in that situation, I try to think, do I have anything interesting to say to this person? You know, and a lot of times the interesting thing could be a compliment for them or expressing gratitude to them. And in either case, I want that to be genuine. You know, I want that to be because I just saw them play and I was really moved and like, holy shit, thank you for that performance. And if all they say is, you know, thank you, thanks for coming, good to meet you, then I'm fine with that. If it leads to a longer conversation and maybe the beginnings of, you know, a relationship that could yield work or, you know, a musical experience, great. But I don't approach someone just for contact's sake. Like I approach them with something specific to tell them about them. Again, like a compliment or just expressing some gratitude or whatever. And then if they're, you know, if they turn around and they're a little interested in me, great. If not, fine. But it just feels more down to earth. It feels more genuine. It feels less germy, to use a Nashville word. You know,
germy.
I don't
I like that.
Yeah, like I don't approach people. I mean, I'd be lying if I said that the professional ambition of it was not a factor, but I try to lead with just an interaction that I want to have with that person.
Yeah.
no matter where it leads.
I'm happy that you guys both are similar to me, because I'm sure that there are some people that it's their code. They're like, this is your job. It's your career. You have to make that contact no matter how uncomfortable it is. Obviously, you have to make it as organic as possible. You can't just be like, hi, I'm Ben. I'm a drummer. Please hire me. But, it's...
Right, and there's how you say no matter how uncomfortable it is, for who?
Exactly. Exactly.
Right? Like, if you get over your own discomfort only to cause someone else's, that didn't get you anywhere.
100%. And that's why it's so tricky. And I think there's no right or wrong answer to that. It has to be organic. And some people's brains work really well that they can just click on this social mode. I'm not like that. I have to have a common denominator, or I just will go blank. And luckily with the Tom thing, I was standing next to the two guys he was on stage with that he knew prior, and I was associated with them. So I already had this level of, we're peers. And if I didn't have that, I probably wouldn't have approached him at all. I would have avoided it like the plague. But I had this weird level of confidence in context of that.
100%.
I'll give you a perfect example of this. So this whole show, and Juliet, is full of Max Martin songs.
Yes.
And Max Martin is one of the producers on the show. And he came to the show, multiple performances for a week in L.A. when we were in L.A. in, I don't know, July or something. But he was around. And after a performance, he came backstage. He met the band. We took a picture with him. He was incredibly gracious. There wasn't a lot of chit-chat, but he shook all our hands. He got all our names. He met us and gave us a little bit of his time. And then later that night, there was an opening week sort of after party at a restaurant near the theater. And Max Martin went to that too. And, I could have gotten more FaceTime with Max Martin at that restaurant. Because, like I said, I think he's incredibly gracious and, will just give a few seconds or a minute of his time to anybody who wants to introduce themselves and talk for a minute and whatever. But I was just like, I am not going to be on his radar for anything other than this. And I think it's either naive or arrogant of me to think that Max Martin is going to hear somebody he's never met play a show that he's already heard 6 different productions of and be like, wow, this guy is amazing. I should know who he is. I should, keep his contact info for the next record I'm making. I have no illusions that happened. So rather than, and that's not me beating the shit out of myself. That's just sort of trying to put myself in Max Martin's shoes and how much shit is on his radar in a given day. Right.
Yeah.
So rather than try to get more FaceTime with Max Martin, I got more FaceTime with Bill Sherman, who's the music supervisor on this show, who hired me and who I don't know super well, but I already know him. And he, unlike Max Martin, has me on his radar for, stuff after this. So I chose to sort of reinforce that relationship with a real person that I really know, rather than try to start who knows what with, obviously Max Martin is a real person, but he's not a real person to me. He's fucking Max Martin.
In my head, in my neuroses, probably narcissistic head, I'm like, what if, I'll be you for a second. What if you walked up and you said something genuine like, oh man, the drums on this record were produced so well. I just wanted to, I always am chasing that sound. And he goes, you know what? I was going to say, your playing tonight reminded me of one of my best friends from blah, blah, blah. And you're like, from Santa Fe. And he's like, oh my God, I live in Santa Fe. And then you end up being in my head, I'm like, what if that happens? And then you go up and you say the drum sound and he goes like, yeah, thanks. That was a Lynn drum. And then walks away and you're like, oh.
That's what I'm thinking on the drive home the whole time.
Yeah. But it's I don't know, in my fairy tale world, in my head, I'm like, well, what if it's the one time that we actually, he's like, let me get your number. This is so crazy. And you're in Santa Fe. And let's have dinner sometime. And I mean, obviously the chances of that are so zero, but in my head,
it could happen. I tend to be overly cynical about this stuff, but We've done almost 600 of these goddamn interviews, and how many stories like that have we heard?
Exactly.
Where, you know, so-and-so was in the audience, or so-and-so happened to know so-and-so who you already play with, or just like there are these sort of kismet moments that lead to big shit sometimes. And, you know, I don't let me convince you not to believe in and hope for those moments.
No, but the weird thing is I also 1000% agree with you. And that's where the stress in my head lies of the thing is, Eric, I would either be on the ride home, I'd be stressing about what I said, or I would be stressing about not going there and not saying anything. Like I'm going to be, it's kind of like choose my heart. You know, it's which one am I going to be neurotic about on the way home?
Sure.
You know, the easier one is to just not do anything.
And, you know, I sort of over-intellectualize or, you know, find justification for instances in which I don't feel like interacting. And I don't feel like getting out. It's getting outside my comfort zone. And,
100%.
And I will find rationalization and justification to not leave my comfort zone in a number of scenarios.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, there's so much that goes into the calculus of these kinds of situations. Like I said, I think there's a huge difference between like you're backstage at someone else's show versus you're on the same bill together. A big one for me, honestly, is like I feel like I can nerd out about drums and music all day, and then sometimes I get really self-conscious about like, oh man, I can't talk about sports or any, you know, I should not ask them about work. Like there's a million other things that I should ask them about that's not music.
I think the same thing, because how many fucking drummers have asked Max Martin about one drum sound or another?
Yeah.
I would love to ask him, like, you know, when I visit Sweden, where should I eat?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know?
See, now I think that's a way better angle than what I would have said if I was you.
Right.
You know?
Maybe.
No, I mean, that probably is a question he doesn't get that often.
Yeah.
But maybe he
think.
loves talking about drum sounds. Like that's the
thing, though. It's like so many times I'll default to like, dude, your those toms, by the way, were amazing. If I'm talking to a drummer, and I don't want to say half, I'll just say half the time that they are like, oh my god, dude, yeah, it's this maple thing that like we actually worked on it to get, or they're like, yeah, I don't know, man, it's the back line. And you're like, all right, so how about Seahawks? I don't know. Like some drummers, the last thing they want to talk about. So yeah, who knows?
I'm trying to grapple, like, well, I am always grappling with insecurity.
Same.
And like I said, I'll find a reason to stay inside my comfort zone. But lately, more and more, I'm just trying to be comfortable within myself and be content in what I'm doing, and be confident in the relationships that I have, and, you know, the reason that I'm doing things. And I think I have made progress on that front, which made me less bajiggity about whether or not to engage Max Martin about anything. In terms of just being secure in what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, and just being patient about that, this Georgia O'Keeffe quote came across my IG feed a month or two ago, and I have been obsessed with it, because like Georgia O'Keeffe she means a lot to me as an artist. She's very attached to New Mexico. I have a version of one of her paintings tattooed on my arm. There's this quote from her, and in this quote, I think she's talking about her creative process and her creative output. But to me, it applies to so much more than that. And she said, I have already settled it for myself, so flattery and criticism go down the same drain, and I am quite free.
I love that.
And I actually sort of misremembered the quote at first. I only remembered the first part. What I remembered is, I have already settled it for myself, so flattery and criticism go down the same drain. And that's great. That's great if you can kind of like treat those things the same and whatever. But what I didn't remember is the last part of that, which is the result. It's I am quite free. So, you know, just finding some security and some confidence in where things are at has made me a lot less, you know, like I said, bajiggity in a given situation about I'm faced with so-and-so, and should I try to talk to this guy, and what could happen if I do talk to this guy? It's like, nope, I'm on this tour. You know, my wife is with me. I'm going home with her. Max Martin may or may not remember me. He may or may not like my playing. I don't need to know that. I touched base with Bill Sherman. We had a good hug. We had a good conversation. I'm good. Let's go home. And I'll add the caveat that, like, you know, talk to me again when this tour is over and I have no work and I'm running around Nashville going like, can somebody play with me, please?
And that's the show. If you're listening on a platform that allows ratings and reviews, do that. It helps more people find the show, so it'll get bigger and better, and hopefully I'll have a chance to sell out one day. But you'll be an OG listener that can brag to all your friends. Anyways, why don't you go and check us out at bigfatsnaredrum.com and follow us on all the socials. Just search for Big Fat Snare Drum and you will find us. The show is edited in part using Isotope RX Audio Editor. It's amazing, so go check that out at isotope.com. And thanks again to Gunnar Olsen for the theme music. Bye.
Hey, Ryan Reynolds here. Wishing you a very happy half-off holiday, because right now Mint Mobile is offering you the gift of 50% off unlimited. To be clear, that's half price, not half the service. Mint is still premium unlimited wireless for a great price. So that means a half day, yeah?
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speeds low after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.